university as an art and culture hub. Typically nowadays, because universities want to go up the rankings, they
Yes.
produce cranking out lots of redundant research, to just. But we are one of the few universities where we have this clarity that we want also to have an engagement with the art and culture industry. So what would you look? What was your?
I think if you marry the two, how do you sustain art? Like an artist does art, but how does he earn a living? That's a very basic question. There are artisans in, just look at the neighborhood, and I'm sure Karnataka will have 5,000 artisans. But how do you make it sustainable in this modern ecosystem? And what are the new, so you have to marry the two. That can be a problem statement, because one of the problems with businesses focus on generating a livelihood. They don't focus on life. So most businessmen are the most miserable people you meet because they have no life other than eating food or going on holidays, because they don't know what the purpose of life is. And arts helps you understand the purpose of life. So you have to help people engage. So one area of study would be sustainability of the arts. But I think not for young students who won't get it, but middle level when they come for, do you all have executive programs?
Yes.
So that is the time when you should ask questions like purpose of art, purpose of life, because I don't think people, they think of art as decoration and time pass. They don't understand art, and we have not packaged it correctly.
Yeah.
So you need packaging of art, because nobody understands. Like now Kantara has become very famous. Everybody's talking about Bhotakala. But what is it? What is the purpose?
Exactly.
And even the simple film has so much of information that I realize the critics don't notice. It talks about caste, it talks about power, it talks about land rights, it talks about forest rights, it's talking about everything. It's talking about IPS officers, corruption, politics, land, so many things are there. So take a popular film and then get students to discuss it through that film, giving them nudges, like giving them cue cards. Why don't you talk about land rights in Kantara? And I always tell, if you take popular films, you'll connect with the younger generation. So how do you connect popular, say, Kannada films or any films and connect it to something very heavy? So that can be a course that can be done where popular things are taken. Like look at an actor's life, and they love, say, let's take a popular actor right now, and so look at his career, look at the acting, and tell us what is the common stream in it. Or look at his business profile. How is his, when you marry it with his business, how his ratings went up, how his cost increased, how does a film star actually make money? Do you know? So these things will connect the two. How does a musician make money? How does a photographer make money? These are practical. So the business side looks at that, and then the opposite side is, okay, what is the purpose? Why are you wasting? Like, I will ask, why is this building designed like that?
So this conversation about caste and land rights, which you spoke about, one of the things that I enjoy is the fact that you sort of subtly bring discussion about politics in a world that is otherwise apolitical and prides itself on being apolitical, the world of business. So on there, when you talk about
businesses are lying when they say they are apolitical.
They are, right? So
no, because you can't get access to resources without political support. What is politics all about? It's about control of resources.
yeah.
Any businessman needs access to resources, and resources will only come to him if the politician gives him that access. So wars are fought for resources.
Yeah. So, but in business, politics is almost
what they mean is
a word that you just
yeah, because you
hushed up. So
because they have to survive, because they know kings will come and go, and they have to work with all the kings.
yeah.
So they have to manage the show, but the kings also need their money. So you need funding from business houses. So you have electoral bonds. Nobody knows who is giving this money. Why? For this reason, to protect the business community. Why are we not revealing who is paying money? Because we want to protect the business community. Otherwise, the business community will be challenged when the king changes.
Looks at the entire administration, and he would like to have certain books signed.
Is this your office?
This is the Vice Chancellor's office.
Can we have some black coffee, please?
wonderful. So that's for me.
Yes.
That's the complete idea of a book.
Yeah, so sometimes I get so drawn with your illustrations that I actually start drawing and understanding what is it that you would have thought. I draw and I paint, and you know that sometimes I leave the book and start constructing a story just because the illustration was so powerful.
Thank you.
Because
that's one thing. Second thing is the experience that you've gotten. I think traveling all the places and then understanding. It is not in a nutshell of discussing about any topic. You just go explore and talk to people, see the places.
Yeah, see, I think you met so many people, so now that's why the conversations are more refined, because you meet politicians, you meet economists, you meet teachers, you meet administrators, and everybody. I always have this one line. I said, what is the biggest challenge you face in your job? And they tell me things, and they reveal, CEOs will tell me what's happening, a shareholder will tell me what's happening, you meet someone, business tycoon, you meet someone who's a self-made millionaire, and then you meet someone who's inherited the million. They're so different from each other. So then you keep applying it with all the mythology that you have read and say, okay. So the stories don't lie.
for educators, our challenge is how do we make not just the students but also their parents, a whole lot of, I would say, generation, understand the importance and role of humanities in their lives. Because somehow India's economy or the vocational driven culture that we have has completely diminished that.
So you have to make a class system, and I believe in a class system that's, some children, and you should tell the parents like this, not all your children are smart. So some will only do jobs, small view, some will have big. So we are providing both. We don't know which child will go in which department, but we believe smart children have focus and perspective. You like focus, we believe as a job, it's our job to give them perspective. If you don't want your children to have perspective, see, liberal arts is about perspective, and business is about, or jobs is about focus. So focus and perspective. Now what do you want? You decide. If parents think my child should only have focus, good for you. But other children want perspective. So for your child, maybe your child doesn't have the capability. And it's perfectly fine if your child doesn't have. Now when you saw talk like that, the parents will start getting, when they realize there's an opportunity lost, the more you sell an idea, the more they'll resist it. The more you tell them it's an opportunity lost, we're giving an opportunity to your child, don't tell us that we didn't provide them. Then there's a discomfort because I'm losing something. So I always tell people like, why should I read mythology? I said, no, it's not meant for you. You don't have the intelligence. Please don't come to my lectures. Now they feel very uncomfortable. I said, no, I meant for a certain caliber of people. You don't have that caliber. It is okay. We should not be ashamed. Diversity and inclusion.
Why should you be ashamed?
Why should you be ashamed? You like to see, some tamasha dance and all that. You should not come to my lectures. So I only tell them, I only pay you. Don't come to my lectures. Please don't. So now they are very worried because I have basically not taken the burden on myself. But I think I tell everybody, Saraswati is not for everyone.
How do the people take it?
They don't know whether praise them or insulted them, because I'm saying that I'm celebrating them. I said, see, you have so much money. Why do you need Saraswati? Lakshmi is dancing every corner of your life. You don't need Saraswati. You should be very happy. Then they get very confused because I know they're miserable inside. I have yet to meet a single rich and powerful person who is not stupid and miserable.
Okay.
Every one of them is, you scratch the surface and you see the problems.
True.
If money solved all, why would we create a goddess called Saraswati if Lakshmi satisfied all our needs? Obviously she doesn't satisfy everything, right? But without Saraswati, if I remove Lakshmi, then you will starve to death. So I need Lakshmi, but I also need Saraswati. And both of them alone, then you need power also. Without power, so Durga is. So our scriptures are designed over thousands of years. They have figured, okay, you need this, you need this, and they've come down to 3 goddesses now. They said, okay, this is the easy. There may be many, but let's now simplify. So Lakshmi bhi chahiye, paisa chahiye, but only money, no, I need power also. But power and money is not enough. I need something. I don't know what it is. You see the rich people today, they're so foolish. I always tell people, the most rich people I've met, I find like the most funny people on earth. It's like watching Tom and Jerry show. And every rich, the powerful, you go to meet a politician. I say he's going to meet a mad dog. You never know when he's going to rip your throat apart. See, a mad dog, when you go, you don't know what to say. You're very careful. Exactly the way you behave in front of powerful people. So I think, oh, mad dog, mad dog, mad dog, mad dog, when I calm down. So I don't get intimidated. I'm scared. Because he will attack me anytime because you say something and they have the power, they can throw you in jail and they can cut your head off, send the... So you're like, very intelligent person you are. You're the after God, even before God you come. So then they feel very nice. I'm like, okay, I've given the dog a little...
So a little curious to ask you one thing. When you're talking about the books, right from history to business, what made you curious to linguistics? I'm a linguist, that's why I'm asking.
No, it's language is the first sign of culture. The earliest sign of culture is the ability to communicate. So the language becomes very important. It's like you have to be which words exist. I'll give you an example. Sanskrit does not have, in Hindi we say aap, tum or tu. This doesn't exist in Sanskrit.
Okay.
It's only mama and twa.
Mama twa.
No, twa. Mama is for me and twa is for you. That's it.
Okay.
There is no three levels. Where did it come from? When everybody says, oh, wow, my language is based on Sanskrit, I'm like, no, it is not based on Sanskrit because Sanskrit does not have aap, tum, tu. So, I'll give, and that's where I read Peggy Mohan and all that because she made me think about, are you familiar with Peggy?
So it's a sheer incidence that we invited her 2 months back and we had like a whole day conversation. And
No, she's I had no clue who she was. I read the book and I contacted her she said, and it was very unfortunate, I contacted her during COVID time and her husband passed. So I was on that day, I wrote to her saying that, and she said, I'm so excited to meet you, but I'm in a crisis right now. I'm like, oh God, what a wrong time.
She was here whole of the day. And
She's brilliant and she makes you think, right? I'll give you an example that grammar, we don't realize the Marathi grammar is not Sanskrit grammar. Marathi grammar is some other grammar. So where did this grammar come from? So you start understanding culture better. So Konkani, for example, does not have aap, tum, tu. So people think it's a disrespectful language. In Konkani they say tawak, like, and it sounds rude because you're so used to aap, tum, tumi. So now with Marathi exposure and Kannada, they're using the word tumi. But my friend said, no, traditionally we would never use it. And they thought it is inferior. I said, no, this is the original Sanskrit based. Sanskrit has only one word for second person. So that's how you think, because it shows an egalitarian society, while different levels of tu shows a feudal society.
There was one thing I was curious about. So the word darshan that you mentioned on stage. So from a sort of layperson, going to temples, the word darshan is generally used as a display, as in like the way in which the priest would use it, like come, it's the darshan, opening the curtains. I wonder if it's a very sort of complex word in that it's trying to it sort of display as well as see. Is it like a two-way?
Well, really, what they may use it colloquially, but what they're doing is jhaki.
Okay.
That's called a jhaki. So it's not this come from darshan. It's come to see.
Right. Okay.
You're going to see God. So darshan is a word which emerged with temple cultures. It was not there before. In the Vedas, this word doesn't exist. Okay. There's no darshan in the Vedas because you don't see anything. There's shruti. Listen.
Right.
Listen. So see. Come and see. Come and see. But come and see and come and be seen. You're also being seen because God has big eyes to look at you.
Right.
So it's in a relationship. You ask yourself, how do you feel when nobody, as a teacher, the student who feels nobody's looking at them. And they feel the teacher is only giving attention to the best student or the front row. The last row person feels nobody's looking at him or doesn't want to be seen. So darshan is the basis of relationships.
And that's how they use this Ramayana darshan.
To see. So you see yourself. You see Ram and Ram sees you, and then you realize, oh my God, I'm very Kaikai. I may think I'm Kaushalya, but actually I'm Kaikai. And everything that Kaikai's dialogue is really the dialogue I say.
So the darshan is not only used in the temple. So the history or the
Storytelling,
Ramayana, storytelling.
narrating the
So all
story.
those things they say darshan. Ramayana darshanam, Mahabharata darshanam.
You will not say that, you will not say Krishna Devaraya Darshanam.
Individual you.
No, it's because that is history.
That was what, sorry?
You will never do darshan of history
Darshan of history.
because it is not Sanatana. So mythology cannot be history. History is restricted. It is time and space bound. Ram is not time and space bound. He is based in Ayodhya. Why are we worshipping in Karnataka? Because he has nothing to do with space and time. It is 7,000 years ago in Gangetic plains. Why is Karnataka people worshipping Ram then? Because the idea is more important, not the physical entity. But when you talk about Krishna Devaraya, it is a Deccan idea. North India will not connect with Krishna Devaraya. Shivaji will be Maharashtra.
Correct.
Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj will be Maharashtra. Bengal will say we don't get it. But when you say Ram or Krishna, it goes pan across the world. So it is not bound by space and time. So history is bound by space and time. So if you want to make Ram restricted, then you will call restrict kar do Ram ko. That is, I think, insulting to the Ramayana and Valmiki and Vyas and the Rishis. But then politicians can do anything, and they are always right because they have the masters of Saraswati. So what do teachers know? Politicians know everything.
So, that brings me to this discussion. Nowadays there's this new revival of history writing in India, which is encouraged by this dispensation. So, one of the things that they say, they create a new category of what it meant to write history in the Indian tradition, which they call as Itihasa, and which they think they are. The sense I get is it's closer to myth. But what what is
so
your view on
whatever
this?
they want to do. See, when a king does it with a sword in his hand, you always agree with him. Never argue. He's so intelligent. Agree with him. When the king goes away, the department will go away. Other department won't go away. Physics, chemistry department doesn't depend on the king. Right? Physics department doesn't depend on who is the king. Chemistry department doesn't depend on who is the king. It is a subject. You want to do chemical engineering, you study chemistry. You want to study the past, you have to go to archaeology, you have to study textual analysis, you have to study historiography. These subjects are not dependent on the king. But there will always be subjects that the king likes. Give the king the pleasure, no? You have to, some dasis will be there who will take care of, the king will take care of them, they will take care of things. They will want to be pandits as long as the king has the sword. You have to respect the king and respect his pandits. But even the pandit knows that the power comes from the king. It doesn't come from a peer-reviewed space. Ma'am is a linguist. She can't make a claim without 10 scholars saying and giving commenting and saying, okay, this is good. Or Peggy Mohan can't just be a scholar because there are 50 other scholars coming and saying that, So this peer review is very important. Peer review is not understood. And that's because the Pramana Shastra, these Pramana Shastra that follow is what is called testimony. Testimony is the opposite of science. See, they don't understand the definition of science. And you should write it. What is the definition of science? Nullius in verba. Not on anyone's word. Nullius in verba. That's the definition of science. Just because you said it doesn't make it true.
Okay.
The moment you say, I said it, therefore it is true, that is Guru talking, that Praman is not acceptable in science. In Vigyan it is nullius in verba. It has to be upaman, measurement. So, who will teach these basics? Especially if you have a sword in hand, so I completely agree with you.
Okay.
I completely agree with you and say you are the Saraswati Shiromani. How does it make a difference? Because he has a sword in his hand.
That is how we have all read about history. Whatever we have read, we always think that we connect that.
No, but a historian has written. We always check who has written the book.
Okay.
Right? How do you study history? You see who has written the book. Okay. On what basis have you made the claim? I was just telling somebody, when you say the Buddha is a historical figure, how do you know? Go to a historian and ask them. No historian will say Buddha is a historical figure. Not one historian will say Buddha is a... They'll say probably, perhaps, maybe. We have got, because all the literature we have on Buddha is 200 years old after his period. Did he live? We don't know. We have these 3-4 sources, we think. Like, did Ashoka spread Buddhism? When you read his edicts, he says Dhamma. He doesn't say Buddhism. He doesn't say Bauddha Dhamma, he says Dhamma. What does Dhamma mean? You ask a scholar of history, they'll say, They will shake their head because they're not sure. But you talk to someone who is a Buddhist, he'll say, yes, he was a historian. And if a king is, if you go to Sri Lanka, they will say, yes, that is true. He came to Sri Lanka. Historians won't agree. They'll say, but if you say that in Sri Lanka, they will take the sword and cut your head off. So you have to agree with the king. But you talk to a historian. If you go to Saudi Arabia and you say something, you can't say anything on Prophet Muhammad. You can't do a historical study of, there is studies on Muhammad done, there is a lot of literature done. Nobody talks about it because you'll be attacked. So now this group is also coming up with its own. So knowledge based on attack is not knowledge. Nullius in verba.
Correct.
It's not science. So it's Vishwas. I believe you, I agree with you, and I completely endorse you under pressure. Take away the pressure, I won't do it. The sword is not there, I will not agree with you at all. But you can't apply that to physics, chemistry, biology. You can't apply that to Newton. You can't apply that to Einstein. You can't apply that to archaeology.
On that point, you mentioned that India is sort of the great sort of intellectual courts of kings in India have always been surrounded by not always, but in sort of particularly good periods like Akbar's time, surrounded by intellectuals who express themselves in a variety of different ways. And of course, we know all the monuments of art that we revere are all products of, in some ways, great propaganda as opposed to maybe mediocre propaganda. But so how do you, in some ways, distinguish the nature of the sword that's eliciting the sort of intellectual shift in India today, this department that might disappear? How is that, in your view, qualitatively different from things that have existed in the past?
Well, I don't know much about the past to say that this is better or worse. I'm sure the kings over there also were lumpens. We have been told that he's a great king. How do you know he's a great king? Because he's written by the court poet. If I always check who has written this. If the court poet has written the king was great, I'm like, really? I don't know if you know Tansen and Baiju Bawra. There are two concepts. Tansen sang for Akbar. Baiju Bawra refused to king and he lived in poverty. Who was the greater singer? He said, I want to sing in freedom. I don't want to be told in the middle of the night the king is bored, come and sing. So we remember Tansen, but there's also a Baiju Bawra tradition which says that I don't want the king, I'm very happy being poor. Tansen didn't have the courage. He loved the money, he loved the glamour. The king in the middle of the night would say, I'm feeling sleepy, come and sing for me. Baiju Bawra will say, I'll sing whenever I want to sing. So you have to pay the price. If you want a government posting, you better agree with the government.
So, this is very interesting. So, because when you say that the kings were lumpens, one general theme in the way you articulate yourself is, as much as you have been this, you made this myths as this fountainhead of so much knowledge, but there is a certain irreverence also you have towards the past and the myth. And whereas nowadays there is this discussion now that you must be pious believers in the myths that you study, and only such insiders have the right to interpret these myths. So what is your response to that? I mean,
That's a different way of studying. That's not a scientific method. It's a non-scientific method. So I consider a non-scientific method of study. Scientific method is the first thing what you do if you're studying medicine. You have to cut the dead body. No? If you don't cut the dead body, how will you become a good doctor? You have to cut the dead body. There is no reverence. If you go to the doctor and the king comes to the doctor and he says, he'll have to remove his clothes in front of the doctor. No, he can't say, I'm the king, figure me out from far away telepathically. No, the king will say, I want to see your urine, have you gone to the toilet? And the king will say, how can you discuss? In Odisha, the kings, they would never say the king went to the toilet. They'll say, king has conquered his bowels. And a conch shell would be blown saying the king has conquered his bowels because the king cannot go to the toilet. So, we have to live with people's egos and all that kind of thing. So, we have to the fact is a subject of study. You read Indian literature, you read Kannada literature, you read Tamil literature. You talk to gods. You have stories of gods being beaten up by people. There is a story of this rishi. It's a folk tale related to Shankaracharya, which is not. It's found in every part of India really. About a Brahmin who used to go to the temple and give food to the Devi and come back. And then one day he was too sick, so he told the Shankaracharya. The story goes, but there are other stories also that he told his son, "I'm too sick. You go and give his son said, I don't know how to do the puja." He said, "You just go and tell her, you're hungry. I brought food for you, and come back." So he went and gave her food and came back with an empty plate. He says, where's the food? She said, no, she ate it. I told her to eat it, she ate it. So the father got very angry. He started beating up the son, saying that what nonsense, you've eaten everything. This is the food we survive on this food. The village gives us food, we give to the goddess, and whatever is left we eat. You have eaten everything. She said, I have not eaten everything. She ate everything. She has a very big appetite. So he goes to find out. And he says, yeah, I did this. And he said, oh, mother, come and eat. And the mother comes and starts eating. And then the priest gets so angry, he starts beating up the goddess, saying the child is foolish. He doesn't know that this food is meant for us, not for you. You should have the intelligence, no? You are a goddess, you are a Mahadevi. You are looking at this child to make her, we are starving because of you. Now this story is a folk tale. Okay. There is a reverence, but there is also a lot of wisdom in it. So it's two things. If you revere this object of study, you will never study that person. It's power, no? What is reverence? Reverence is power. Power that blocks access to knowledge. Saraswati will never respect anybody. She laughs at everyone. So Saraswati as a goddess, all these people don't understand Saraswati at all. So the only reason I respect is because I'm scared of them. They're like mad dogs. I cannot have a conversation with them. They're not intelligent. They have nothing of value to offer other than aggression. But they don't want to understand Saraswati. They don't want to understand the Vedas. They come with authority. The moment you come with authority, how can you learn? You have to cut the dead body to study. You go to any good doctor, the best doctors in the world are accessible. They may not talk to you because they have no time, but they're accessible. Knowledge is Saraswati, Sarita. It has to flow like water, not be locked in a pot with a king guarding you with a sword and saying, I'll cut your head off. So that is the problem with these people. They don't understand the difference between power, money and knowledge. Knowledge, money and power are three different things. Politicians are good with power. Don't think they have knowledge. Akbar thought he was a great singer. If Akbar sang, everybody would say what a great song it was. Super hit in those days. You have to agree with Akbar, no? Because if you don't agree with Akbar, he'll cut your head off. But that doesn't make him Tansen.
Yeah, I can see that. In fact, I wanted to record you.
No, see, the thing is, our knowledge of our culture is very powerful. I don't need the king's help. In fact, it will be an insult to me when the king says, I have met politicians who think that hum aapko nahi chahiye. The knowledge is capable of taking care of itself. It doesn't even need me. So we have to respect, genuinely respect what is called Sanatan. Sanatan means it doesn't die. So it doesn't need a savior. Your ego is, you want to be a savior for your ego. Knowledge doesn't, look at from somewhere Bhutakolam has become super popular. Who knew about Bhutakolam? People are talking, I have written about these practices 10 years ago, about the Tulunadu and Yakshagana, and nobody was interested in that. Now suddenly one film
made everybody
super hit, and they're like so hot, so cool. I said, it's not hot, it's a very beautifully done, crafted film. It's and talking about such difficult issues, land rights, tribal property rights.
So all, as you rightly said, it's a packaging.
Because a good story has to be packaged. The chanda, the meters. If you read why is Tulsi Ramayana famous in North India? And North Indians think only not that exists, right? North Indians are completely clueless about South India. They don't know it exists. I go to North India, I'm like, do you know there is a place called Karnataka? I said, have you heard of
my colleagues looking at me and laughing. So you know what it means. Yet to discover the South Indian
it's not taught.
Culture.
See, I'll tell you the reason for this. If you are a politician and you want to be successful in India, 50% of the votes come from the Gangetic plain.
Of course. It's Uttar Pradesh.
Right? So that is why you only talk about Ram, Krishna, Mathura, Ayodhya, Kashi, everything is India. And the rest of India don't matter. So as a politician, Odisha doesn't matter. Bengal used to matter in pre-independence India. Doesn't matter anymore. Punjab used to matter in pre-independence India. Doesn't matter anymore. Maharashtra doesn't matter. Karnataka doesn't matter. Tamil Nadu doesn't matter. Only Gangetic plain matters. So I know. So when they talk about, I said, why you only talk Ramayana, Mahabharata? Why don't you? How many of them know about Krishna Devaraya? How many of them know about Hampi? How many of them know Chalukyas? Rashtrakuta? They've never heard of Amogha Varsha. You just go to Delhi and tell them, please explain to me. Tell me 10 lines on Amoga Varsha. And they will look at you and say, is it Indian? But they're controlling the swords. All these people, I remember this guy telling me about our culture, Rajput culture. I said, do you know what Gajapatis? Who are Gajapatis? I said, the kings of Odisha. So then now Lachit Barphukan has become very famous because Rai defeated Mughals. I said, do you know of Shankardev? Do you know of Satra? Do you know of this? So I started asking them questions. I said, what do you know about Manipur? What is the difference between Krishna's worship in Manipur versus Assam? Then the Delhi lobby gets very nervous. Because they don't know, no? Saraswati kidhar hai udhar? They don't know. Politicians have swords, they don't have shastras.
So, the thing that you brought up, this question of mithya, the whole idea of having these multiple truths coexisting with each other. On one hand, that's a beautiful idea, but what about that being used as an excuse to descend into a kind of relativism where you say, we have my truth, you have my truth, or your truth, now we don't need to talk. There's one thing that you have your truth and I have my truth, and now let's have a further conversation. But nowadays, the lack of conversation that's happening is about just being very self-satisfied with your truth, So that
you don't look at mithya without talking about ahankar. The purpose of life is not to revel in mithya. The purpose of life is to discover Atma. And the only way you'll discover your Atma is when your mithya moves towards Brahma. Which means you have to know more things. Your mind has to keep expanding and you start realizing, I know so little. You see Brahma in its finest form. Because every day is some new knowledge. And then you realize, oh God, I'll never know everything. Never ever will I know everything in this world. So the Atma Gyan is very important. So all these words come from Atma Gyan. That's the highest, that's Brahma Vidya. So these people are talking about mythology and all that. No, they are interested in Brahma Vidya. No, they are interested in all these Gurujis who talk about dimensions and flying saucers. So that is...
So we need to speak a little bit about Gurujis. One thing which I want to really bring this up, please, because it's bottled up in me for a long time. It's a question I didn't ask you. Nowadays we have lots of these English-speaking gurus who use this sort of pastiche of philosophy and mythology and everything. So one thing that they never reveal their sources. When I don't want to name them, these gurus right away, because you can guess who I'm talking about. When I hear them, I know that they have read a course in ethics, they have done a course in psychology, and they, to their very very the followers who are very innocent, they just have these knowledge and all spouting upon them. But whereas you are very transparent, and this is something that I was listening to a podcast interview you had with this young person who is in Colombia. I think his name, I forget his name, some Gupta, Prakhar Gupta. And what I really liked is that you reveal the source of knowledge. Today you were so open about telling that I read linguistics, history, and I am the product of all those things. Whereas the thing about gurus is that, they might have all these fancy ashrams and all that, but somewhere in their libraries they have all the books of Western philosophy and everything which they read. And then
many of them are very good friends of mine.
Yeah, but they will never reveal that part. They keep that concealed.
So
I think that mystifies them more than they...
See, their audience wants that. See, their audience are lazy people. Their entire market is based on lazy people who doesn't want to read.
Yeah.
So I know intelligent people in the ashram who don't want to read. So they want to say that you are the Swayambhu, you are the source of knowledge. So he is the Swayambhu. I have got all knowledge magically appearing out of me. Yeah. And it's feeding each other. The student and the teacher are feeding each other. They hate analysis, they don't want to do research, there's no library, nothing, they're not interested. They have to only remain in this little beehive. So it's a beehive that they design. The queen bee and the bee, and they're happy with each other. They produce honey, right? So it's perfect for them. They are not interested in knowledge. So when I meet a guru, and I'm like, whatever your guru says is true, be happy. Because see, they are also insecure. It comforts them. Why did they go to the ashram? They were unhappy. They were miserable. This guru has comforted them, has given them hope and meaning, which means the drama and performance is required. So, for example, when you talk about Bhutakola, these are performances, right? It is a complex performance which takes place. This is another kind of performance. So that group of people, you may not like it because you're not an insider. You go to a temple, it's a performance. It's a performance for that emotion. Scholars don't fall in that category. They don't care for performance because their job is to analyze, break down. Maybe in other aspects of our lives we would like for example, if I go to a doctor, I don't want the source of the knowledge, I just want the doctor to cure me. I don't care which college he went to, if he gives me anything and I'm pain, he takes my pain away. Now you'll say, but it is placebo effect, and I don't care. The pain was there, he took away the pain. I respect him. But you will go and say, but he's a charlatan, he's a magician. It doesn't matter. My pain was there, my pain went away. So we have to understand it in that context. I know what they're saying is, but that his audience is happy with it. It's like the voters who believe in the politician, right? Logic tells you that what is wrong with you, but belief is very powerful. People kill people. Look at what's happening in Iran. They're not even letting girls just open their eyes. Just a small thing like that. So terrifying. It's terrifying people. So these are complex issues we must understand. And not everybody has. For me, the Gurujis follow a performance, a theatrical performance, which satisfies their community. If they don't, so some Gurujis, will wear particular clothes. If they are suddenly seen being normal, so they'll always have, all these Gurujis will have kutirs where they'll be isolate themselves, where they can be themselves. Because remember, the Guru is going through a lot of frustration. He wants to live a normal life and he can't because the performance is full time. He cannot do anything. Now he is controlled by his audience. They want him to behave in a particular way. They want to. So you have no idea how horrifying it is to be a Guruji. He wants to eat an ice cream, he can't because he has decided that he is above. He can't do that. He can't go to a dance bar. He can't go on a date. He can't do that. He has to wear only those clothes. He has trapped himself. So that is mithya. So we have to see the world from their point of view. And it's a good vote bank.